The time wand is something that can be quite confusing to get, but I'm going to show you how to get it in today's episode, and even potentially why it is better than the time in a bottle. So, the time wand consists of a time crystal, some blaze gold, and some ferric ore ingots. And the hardest bit about the time wand is actually the time crystal, so we're going to start with that first. So we're actually going to need the Shadow Pulse goo, which is from Just Dire Things, and because I'd never made it before, I'm going to have to make it now. But once it was made, we needed to get a budding amethyst. Now, budding amethyst you can't pick up using Silk Touch. You can go and find a geode and place the goo down by the budding amethyst, and over time it'll just convert. Or if you're like me, you want to make it, you can by putting a block of amethyst inside of the Apotheosis enchanting with the correct Quanta, Eterna, and Arcana, and you can enchant it and infuse it, turning that block of amethyst into a budding amethyst. Now, the combination that I used for the Apotheosis way was the Draconic Shelf, 3 Echoing Skulk Shelves, and 5 Seashelves. And once I'd enchanted my block of amethyst, I could then throw my bookshelves back to what it was, so it's back to being maxed out. And then we could simply just put the budding amethyst block down by the Shadow Pulse goo, and over time it will automatically take over that budding amethyst. Of course, we need to make sure we feed the Shadow Pulse the correct food that it requires, so anything that's skulk related. And once it's fed, it will then start to take over the budding amethyst, which will then give us the time budding crystal. Although it is not done there, because this is where it gets a little confusing, because we need to pick this thing up and put it in the overworld, the nether, and the end. Now, that doesn't mean we need 3 of these things. We only need the 1. But the way we're going to be able to pick it up is not through Silk Touch, because it will just break. We're going to use a cardboard box, or you could use item swappers from Just Dire Things as well, stuff like that. But anything else that you can use to pick up a block, you can go with that. And as I'd made my cardboard box, I went back over to the budding time crystal block, and it had changed colour. Now, I placed this down in the mining dimension, but I'm assuming this thought it was the overworld, when it's not. But either way, once it changes colour and goes to a blue, it means it's got enough time in the overworld, it's time to move it over to the nether. So that's what I did. I picked it up in the cardboard box, went over to my vibranium setup, placed it down, took the box off it, and you could see these orange particles going into the block, meaning it is collecting the time from the nether, and we knew it had finished when it turned orange. So for the last time, we're going to pick it up and we're going to put it in the end, and we knew when it was finished in the end because it turned green. I then picked it up and put it in my mega base and started to prepare all the other items needed for the wand while the clusters started to grow. And it really didn't take long for me to get everything needed for the wand, but this thing also requires power to work as well, so we might as well prep the power side of things for the wand as well. So I made a player transmitter and the card binding it to myself, and then placed it down, and we were all fine and dandy getting power to ourselves. Once we had all that sorted, the clusters had still not fully grown, so it was just a case of waiting. But what I didn't realise is it doesn't last forever, and it will run out of time, which means we have to do the whole process over again. So we'll have to put it back into the overworld, the nether, and the end. But of course, when we pick this thing up and try and collect some of the clusters, even though they're not fully grown, of course, we're not going to get anything. We try and pick this thing up in the box. The clusters then get destroyed. And so it's just going to be quite a vicious cycle of never ever actually getting any of these time crystals. So I thought to myself, I'll give it one more attempt to see if I can get some crystals growing. However, in the quest book, there is a YouTube tutorial on how to automate it. So let me go and prepare all the materials for that. In the time of getting all the things, a cluster has grown to its full potential. So I broke it and we managed to make ourselves the wand. Now, of course, it's charged, it's fully charged, but it's got no time fluid. And this time fluid requires us to a time crystal in some polymorphic fluid. Now, how do we get this polymorphic fluid? Well, we have to drop in some polymorphic catalyst into some plain old water. And that is exactly what we did. But that was only 2 buckets worth of stuff that we've done. Now, and this thing can hold about 8. So we're going to need a way of automating that as well, which we will do a little bit later on. However, let's automate the budding time crystal. I just want to say and give all the credit to Pilpo, because this is his design. I am literally following it through and through. If you guys are struggling to find the video, it's one on the quest page. If you're not in game or you can't play but you want to watch the tutorial anyway, I will leave a link in the description. And make sure to go show all the love to him, because this is his design. However, if you want to stay, I will talk you through it. And what we're going to need is an item collector. We're also going to want 3 advanced sensors, 3 advanced swappers, the wrench from Just Dire Things. We're going to want an Eclipse pickaxe, and we're also going to want an advanced breaker. Now, I'm aware I do not have the advanced breaker in my inventory. I do go and make that a little bit later on. So first things first, we're going to want to place down the advanced swappers, and we want to place them 3 blocks apart, facing each other. And when we come to put down the time crystal budding, we want it to be 1 block in the center of those 3 blocks that we left, but elevated by 1 block, because we're going to want this thing to transport the clusters as well, not just the budding. And the way we get it to do that is by 1, turning on the render area button at the bottom right of the interface for the advanced swapper. It'll bring up a red block. This is the block that is selected to be transported, and we can move it using the controls up, down, left, right, wherever you want it to go. And the one thing we want to do with this is make sure the radius on it is 1.0. The reason we want it like that is because it'll do a 3 by 3 by 3 cube, and this will transport the clusters with it as well when we link it to the next set of advanced swappers. And we want to do the exact same thing for the other swapper as well. And the next set of advanced swappers, before we give anything any power, we can actually go and place down in the nether, do the exact same thing, and we can do the exact same thing in the end as well. Once you'd configured the area on all of your swappers, it was then back to the overworld and start linking them together. So you want to link one of the swappers inside of the overworld to one of them in the nether. And while you're in the nether, go to the other swapper, right click on it with the wrench to link it to one of the swappers in the end. And to complete the ring, go to the other swapper in the end, right click on it to remember it, and go back to the overworld, and on the opposite swapper from the one that's linked to the nether, link it to the end one. And you can test this is working by giving it a redstone signal. Once you have tested it and it made it all the way to the end, we can then put down an advanced sensor on the one swapper that is linked to the overworld, render the area, and make sure that red block is on the budding crystal. We're then going to type in time crystal inside of the JEI, go to the budding and drag it into the filter on the advanced sensor. We're then going to want to make sure it's on allow list, and on the budding time crystal block we can right click and we can set any sort of stage that we want. So there are 3 stages, 0, 1 and 2. In the end, we're going to want to set it to 0, which means when the time crystal budding block has run out of time and has gone back to being a dull, dark green, the sensor will pick it up, send out a redstone signal to the swapper and send it back to the overworld, where it will regain the time in the overworld. Which then leads us into the overworld sensor, which we're going to place on top of the swapper that is linked to the nether. We'll do the exact same thing, but this time we want to make sure the stage is set to 1, which means when it goes blue, sends out a redstone signal to the swapper, sending it to the nether. Once that's done, we can then go to the nether, and on top of the swapper that is linked from the nether to the end, we will then place down the advanced sensor, do the exact same thing as before, but make sure this time the stage is set to stage 2. We could then power all of this up, and over time it will be sent to each one of the dimensions. Now, how are we going to get the clusters off? Well, we'll place down an advanced block breaker, making sure we are in the end. We will put down the Eclipse alloy pickaxe. Now, the reason we are using an Eclipse pickaxe is because it is charged with Fe as durability, and this can be charged within the machines. So the advanced breaker will actually recharge this pickaxe, keeping it going, and it will effectively be infinite durability, or unless I run out of power. And in the filter bar, what we're going to do is we're going to drag the time crystal cluster and the time crystal, because I don't actually know which one it's going to register as. So as a failsafe, we put both in there, make sure it's on allow list, and we set the range so the red block is over the time crystal block. We will then on the radius make sure every single one of them is on 1.0, so it encapsulates the full block, even the clusters. Make sure to give it some power, and then it'll start mining the clusters when they are fully done. As item collection, we're going to use an item collector. Make sure we have some sort of ender chest going back to our ME system. And with the item collector, as long as you put it on top of a block that has an inventory, we can then set the range on the item collector and make sure it's going to capture everything around. Now, I went till it went round the machines as well. So I made sure the blue block was on the time budding crystal, and then instead of doing +1 on all the radius, I did +2. So no matter how far that time crystal will go, whether it go 1 block or 2 blocks, it shouldn't go any more than that. It still gets picked up by the item collector and sent into the ender chest going into my ME system. And to make sure this is working, we can use our time in a bottle, and we can speed up the time budding crystal, time budding block. Now I'm going to do this whole system again, because we're going to have to try and automate the time fluid. Well, that was good timing, because I've just finished setting up the second time crystal, going to this ender chest, which is then getting pulled from the ender chest going into the drawer below me. But in the time of setting this budding time crystal machine up, it's just going to be easier if we go ahead and got the B. Now, why is that? Because by the time I would have automated the polymorphic catalyst, because I'm going to need the blaze gold, which we need to use the goo on, which we need to place down a load of gold blocks by any sort of goo to get blaze gold. It's going to be easier if we just start productive bees, because all of the Justire things, ores, are there. We've got Eclipse Alloy, we have Celes Gems, there's Blaze Gold B, and even a Ferrocore B, which is all the ores that we're going to need from just dire things. So unfortunately, me setting up this second machine was absolutely pointless. Although we are going to be getting time crystals even quicker. This leads me to my final question. Is the time one better than the time in a bottle? Not unless you've got into bees. But it looks like I know what I'm going to be doing in the next episode. But that's going to do us for today, so thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to smash the like button, consider subscribing. This is actually the first video that I'm filming where we have hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you all for that. That is absolutely insane. And I will see you all again very, very, very soon. Goodbye.